Show that talks about sports and other topics relatable to sports fans. Joining me again this week in Pennsylvania is Scott Blanda.
Good afternoon. How are you? Good to see you again.
We haven't been able to find the right coverage, but I'm off for the next couple of Thursdays, so we're going to party every Thursday that is possible. All right.
Nice.
So we're going to talk about, I'm going to say, I know you love to throw around the word America's team. America's team in October into early November was the Atlanta Braves, and the Atlanta Braves ended up taking down the evil nemesis of the Houston Astros in 6 games this past week. What are your thoughts on what the Braves did, how they did it, and how awesome it was that they were able to do it?
Very impressive, considering they were not one of the standouts. They didn't have 90 wins, only 88 and 73. Everybody thought that second round series, we talked about that, the Giants and the Dodgers, 107, 106 wins. We thought that was, the winner of that pretty much had a bye to the World Series. Clearly not the case, and clearly the Braves deserve to be there because they pretty much dismantled Houston. I know you're happy about that. Yankee Nation is thrilled about that.
Yes.
I myself was rooting for Houston, and that has nothing to do with a rivalry with the Mets. I saw some Met fans throwing that out there about, how they shouldn't be rooting for the Braves. There really is no rivalry with the Braves. I mean, they're division foes. That they've only played in the playoffs once, not 99. We're 21, 22 years removed from that. It was a great series. Obviously, it got heated with John Rocker's comments. Throughout that entire Bobby Cox era, Chipper Jones, Andrew Jones, Maddox, Walt Glavine, there really wasn't much of a rivalry. They played that one series, and then the only really other moment I can pinpoint would be that first game back after 9/11 against the Braves when Mike Piazza hit that incredible home run, that would, New York healing home run, if you will. But beyond that, there's really no hatred there between the Mets and Braves. So while I was rooting for Houston, I'm not upset that the Braves won. It's not like, they were playing Philly or something like that. So no, good for them. A pure Cinderella team. Nobody saw them coming. And, even Houston, what was Houston? They won their division, 95 wins. They had a great year. Like we said, whether they found a new way to cheat or not. So it's definitely a bit of an upset. And you could definitely call the Braves a Cinderella team. And while they might have underachieved in that Bobby Cox era with only one World Series, division win after division win after division win. Better late than never, a little retribution for them. So my hat's off to Atlanta. Good for them.
All right, so I have a couple of points to pick off for you there. So the reason why I opened the show with America's team is just because the Houston Astros, with what they did in 2017 and the fallout of it, and how they were able to just basically get immunity and really a slap on the wrist rather than the full throttle of what would be expected for such a I don't want to say heinous act because there's certainly worse things in life, but it was a black eye on baseball, especially the way it was all handled. And then the Houston Astros basically get a free pass because the COVID-19 pandemic happened, so they're playing a shortened schedule with no fans. And they ended up finding it this year, but then a bunch of people were like, oh, it's water under the bridge and all that. I'm a Yankee fan, yes, and all Yankee fans, Yankee Nation did not want Houston to win. Basically, it was just whoever came out of the NL was between the Houston Astros and the White Sox for the ALCS, and but you even have the Los Angeles Dodgers who were directly affected by 2017 just as much as the Yankees were. So even though the Atlanta Braves were the ones that actually knocked them out, and me personally, any team that knocks my team out, I always want them to go down in flames. Like they were even, they even wanted them to beat Houston because they were just like, man, like they just nobody liked Houston. So it was basically what you had was Atlanta, everybody rooting for Atlanta except for Houston, and then your pocket division rivals. I'm pretty sure a lot of people in Philadelphia that wasn't really rooting for the Braves, especially since they beat them out for that East spot over the course of the season. I did see some of the Mets fans, with the rebuttal and going for Houston. Kind of, it was a mixed bag. It wasn't really like an overwhelming thing. But I think more to your point about the no real rivalry. I think it's more of a jealousy thing, kind of from the Mets fan standpoint of the Braves, because the Braves have been absolutely dominant for pretty much all the time I've been born. Or at least following baseball since the '90s. It started off with Tom Glavine and John Smoltz, and then they got Greg Maddux, and at one point they had like 4 Cy Young winners in the rotation, and it was just what was it, 14 division titles in a row, and they've still won a bunch since. Not a lot recently. I feel like they were trading with Philadelphia there for a little bit, but overall, the amount of success that they've had in the last 20 years. Or even, let's say, 30 years, as opposed to what the Mets have had during that stretch of time. I think that would be more of where the resentment would be rather than the head-to-head matchups where the Braves kind of just won all the time, and Chipper Jones named his kid Shea because he loved playing at Shea Stadium. And, and I know a lot of Mets fans hate Freddie Freeman, and then Freddie Freeman ended up hitting a homer, and he was all smiles in that celebration. It was I think it was good for baseball. And my overall prevailing thought was that it was really good for baseball because even when you had Joe Buck who in the ninth inning, he's saying how the Astros had a lot of adversity, even though they had like the whole scandal thing and the fallout from it. Like it didn't even sound like he believed what he was saying. Like it was just like he was forced to say something and came up with as best he could. He came up with something where it was, kind of plausible and kind of just, like the losers thing. Oh, they still did good this year and da-da-da-da-da. But, he didn't even believe it himself. It was just a bunch of crap. And it was great that the Atlanta Braves fairly and squarely, just like the Washington Nationals did, it was in 2019. And, they took down the bad guys.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny, you start with that term, with the term America's team. And, yes, I say it's a joke from time to time, but you can definitely say with all the hatred nationwide for Houston, you could have called Atlanta. In fact, I have heard the Braves referred to in the past as America's team. Doesn't quite have the same ring as when it's the Cowboys, but pretty much any purist was united in the Braves, so they pretty much earned that moniker for this World Series. And yeah, I mean, when you watch a baseball broadcast, they're going to try and keep it, or any sports broadcast, they're going to try and keep it as PC as possible. They're not going to get into the controversy, and you got all sorts of controversies at any given time going on in a professional sport. So the announcers, for the most part, want to keep it strictly about the sport on the field, regardless of what happened around it. So, yeah, I guess you could say Joe Buck maybe was force-fed that line. Maybe he was just saying what he could. I don't know. But they're going to dodge that. They're not going to get on a national, supposedly impartial broadcast and, say that, Houston needs to get their butts whipped. Maybe the Braves' own announcer said that during their broadcast, but you're not going to see that in a national broadcast. So I'm not a huge Joe Buck fan. A lot of people do not like him for monotone purposes, but I think under the circumstances, I'll cut him a little slack. And he did what he could or did what he had to do, we'll say. And I guess that's that.
I'd say so. It's fair, but just the conviction himself, like as he was saying, you could tell it was just like, we just got to come up with something good. And then he's like, all right, well, the rest of the time we're going to talk about how kick-ass the Atlanta Braves are. It was an amazing story. That they end up losing superstar Acuna in the early part of the season, which would completely devastate really any team. And then they end up having other key injuries along the way. They make a trade for the eventual MVP Jorge Soler from the Royals. And you always look at every trade deadline deal in any sport, and it always comes down to the biggest winner is obviously the one that ends up winning the championship, because those are the reasons why you make the deals, is to make that final push. And there's only really one winner of a trade, a mid-season trade like that, especially when it's a rental. I'm not exactly sure what Jorge Soler's situation is. I'm pretty sure it'd be possible for them to sign him, but even if they did or didn't, I mean, he just really put he put his stamp on this series with 3 home runs, 6 RBIs. All the homers ended up being go-ahead homers. And this is a guy who he led the league in he led the American League in homers in 2019 with 48. Then he ends up having the typical down years that a lot of hitters have had. A lot of them on the Yankees where they're hitting like 200 but with like 20 homers and like not really being as productive as they could have been. But then they end up he ends up winning and he ends up making the biggest statement of all. I mean, did you see that last the homer that he had in Game 6 where he just like anybody who wants to talk about the most disrespectful bat flip? I mean, that was just incredible. It was just like he was just like, all right, well, this is it. I just took over this game, and it was that just put any other bat flip before it to shame. And nobody talked about it. It was just so ridiculously disrespectful, but I loved it. It was great.
Yeah, I think if they were playing any other team but Houston, I don't think you would have seen that. And Houston's got everything that they've had for the past few years coming to them. The booze, the people dressing up in garbage cans, guys getting plunked. Altuve may have set a record for getting plunked in the last couple of years. You know what? They got everything that they've had for the past few years from fans and opposing players. They've earned. So they earned that bat flip too, and it was poetry, really. Yeah. It was putting them to bed in the World Series with that home run, and so not the most sportsmanlike thing I've ever seen, but given the circumstances, he gets a pass. In fact, he gets props for it.
Absolutely. It was because in Game 5 too, they ended up going up early with a grand slam. The game was over. Houston ended up coming back. I mean, in this particular situation, Houston was home in Game 6. It just did not seem like they were going to get these 3 runs back, and then they ended up losing 7-0. So it was very interesting. It was great to see. I think America needed that, and they were rallying behind it. I mean, pretty much you had like 85% of America going for the Braves in this series. And as far as baseball with the national pastime and keeping steroid users out of the Hall of Fame because of the way they cheated, and Pete Rose, since forever ago. It's just they don't like to reward these kind of things, and fortunately, I guess their hands were tied with the way they, with the way that Major League Baseball overall handled the situation, and then the Braves put a little old sweet, good old fashioned justice on them, and got it done.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that remember, Atlanta and the Braves, Georgia in general was out. The entire state was on the hot seat to the point where they lost the All-Star game earlier in the year. Yeah. Now we're not going to delve into the pros and cons of that whole issue, but it was an issue. They did lose the All-Star game because of some legislature that they passed. So they took the All-Star game away from them. Now all of a sudden, everybody, it's like that never happened, and everybody, the whole country was rooting for them because they were playing Houston.
Well, I think that's what happens when it's just sports. Like nobody, no, the baseball team didn't really have anything to do with the what an entire state's doing. It's just basically the players on the team. But we'll look at Atlanta from the sports standpoint, and you see it was mentioned how the Falcons blew the 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl against the Patriots, and the Atlanta Braves actually last year they blew a 3-1 lead with their series with the Los Angeles Dodgers. So it's just there was definitely a lot of demons to tackle with what the Atlanta Braves were able to do, and it's good for the city of Atlanta. We're not even we'll also mention that they're 0 for 2 in having NHL franchises, so it just doesn't really work out. It looks like the Atlanta Hawks right now just over. I mean, the early part of the season are 4-4, but that there's still a long way to go as far as the way that book's going to be written. But they seem to have a very solid young team, and now the Atlanta Braves are world champions.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned you mentioned over 2 on NHL. Yeah, not exactly a hockey city right there, but they're doing really well right now. They're out fresh off the World Series. George Bulldogs have overtaken. Did a few weeks ago the mighty Crimson Tide to be number 1 in the nation. And there was a photo today, and there's a third thing. I forgot who. I'm not really much of a NASCAR fan, but apparently a Georgia native NASCAR racer has won a few races. I forgot his name, but he's apparently on top of the NASCAR world right now. So definitely a good time to be an Atlanta fan right now, or just an Atlanta sports fan, we'll say. Georgia.
Absolutely. All right, so we're actually going to segue into the NHL now. So we have a couple of surprising stories. Yeah, I mean, we're about 1/8 into the season for everybody in the league, but the Carolina Hurricanes right now are 9-0, 9-0-0. What's your take on that?
I was saying it at the beginning of the year. Everybody was saying how the division is the Islanders and Washington's to win or lose. And I said, don't count Carolina out. They've been building towards this for a few years now. Yeah, they took a little hit with the defense, losing Dougie Hamilton to the Devils. But, they had a defensive overload, which is what enabled us to get Adam Fox relatively cheap, which I'm sure they're regretting now. But, they are the real deal on both sides of the ice. The special teams, goaltending, finally. They're just. Are they going to go undefeated? I'm assuming no. But everybody wanted to say that this was the Islanders and Washington's division to lose. I said no. This is the Islanders definitely, but I said this is Carolina's time. They've been building towards this. They have arrived, and clearly they have arrived. So no, I mean 9-0 is surprising, but them being in first place is not good for them. Been down there a few times. Down there, good fans. They were patient through some very, very dark times. Ownership, not putting any money, having to figure out how to get up to the cap floor just to legally spend the minimum they had to spend for years. So they've been waiting a long time for this. They have arrived, and they are easily one of the top contenders in the league, and a 9-0 record show for it starts.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, when you look at the Carolina Hurricanes as a whole, I mean, when you hear the stories about David Ayers, who was the Zamboni driver who ended up winning against the Toronto Maple Leafs, and the team that he ended up winning with was the Carolina Hurricanes. I mean, the Carolina Hurricanes, their defensive scheme and the way they operate on defense is second to none across the league. I mean, they've just always had that staple with Rob as a coach, and he's been able to implement that long term. And Yeah, I guess similar to what Barry Trotz has done with the New York Islanders, but at this point, it seems that the Hurricanes have more scoring. Like they hit more homers with their draft picks and scouting with talent, where they can complement more offense into what they're already stout defense. And I mean, at this point, it doesn't really matter who's goaltending because we even had what was it Alex Nejlovic, who they ended up punting away to the Detroit Red Wings, and everybody thought they were crazy. And then they got Frederick Anderson, and they were like, "Oh man, he couldn't win with the Leafs. How could he? How great is he going to be with the Hurricanes?" Well, he's one of the better goalies in the league right now, and the Hurricanes are 9-0 and just writing history along the way.
Yeah, yeah, well, they are definitely arrived and made for everybody knew coming in that this was going to be a very tough division. The Capitals have been there, not going anywhere. We talked about the Flyers early on. People weren't sure whether 2 years ago was the team that they were building to be, and last year was the anomaly, or the other way around. They're off to a great start, 5-2-1. Even the Devils are above 500. There's nobody in that division who's under 500. If you break it into the three columns, I myself am not a fan of that. A loss is a loss, but if you look at it, the three columns wise, win, loss, overtime, loss, there's not one team with less wins than regulation losses in that division. So top to bottom, everybody knew that division. Now, obviously, it's not going to remain like this. We're only, anywhere from 7 to 10 games in. But that division is looks very, very competitive and very tight through the first half of the season.
So how do you feel about the Carolina Hurricanes? They have 5 ex-Rangers on the team. It used to be Tampa South. New York Rangers South used to be residing in Tampa Bay, where there was 5 ex-Rangers on the team. Now, currently, there's only 1 ex-Ranger on the team, which is Ryan McDonough, 2-time Stanley Cup champion. And now the Hurricanes have 5 ex-Rangers on the team. It's been thrown around a lot during social media. What do you think about that, and how that relates to their success, and how it doesn't, what we just did with them, and all that blah 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 that usually gets thrown around?
Yeah, they've replaced Tampa on my recycle bin, my Hall of Trash. You've seen it. Yeah, I'll tell you who the biggest surprise was Tony D'Angelo, because what happened to him and what he went through, on his exit from New York. It looked like, especially given the socio-political climate that we live in, looked like his career might have ended in a nice, young, tender, mid-20s age. So I'm glad that he got a second chance, and he's just absolutely lighting it up. I believe he leads all defensemen per game and plus minus right now. He knew that, even before, his controversial tweets that got him eventually booted from the Rangers, there were always rumors of, locker room dissension centered around him, attitude problems, whatnot. I think he knew that this was his probably last chance, and he seems to be on his best behavior, not to mention he's lighting it up on the ice. So good for him. I was sorry that the Rangers got rid of it. The way it went down, it more or less had to happen. But it's just, it was a shame that, he wasn't the Tony D'Angelo we're seeing now, and that we saw just strictly on the ice at times with the Rangers. It's a shame that we didn't get that career out of him with the Rangers, but he seems to be taking this second chance very seriously with Carolina, doing well. Derek Stepan scored a goal, ex-Ranger. Brady Shea has found a home because after a very optimistic rookie year with the Rangers, he didn't really pan out as the as the next Boogaboom or whatnot that we thought he was going to be. It's with an when Rangers leave, unless in my opinion, unless they go to the Islanders, Philly, or Devils, I wish the best for them, especially when you got 5 of them on one team. So yeah, you can call you can call Carolina the new Rangers South, and it's good that those guys found a home and are they're whooping ass is what they're doing.
100%. So their counterpart in awesomeness as far as division leading and dominance goes is the Florida Panthers, who are 8-0-1 right now. And they ended up losing their head coach because of past issue with the Chicago Blackhawks that we won't get into. But they're still pumping. They're still a well-oiled machine. I think they have more of the offensive, top-heavy, go offense where it's very different than what the Carolina Hurricanes, because Carolina Hurricanes, they have the defensive first, and then they kind of feeds into the offense. The Panthers are just like, we're gonna try to crush you every single game.
Yeah, we've seen that before. We saw that for a decade out of the Capitals. From the pretty much the end of the lockout when Ovechkin, pretty much the first 10 years of the Ovechkin era, saw that. A team that won the division every year, no problem, beat teams 6-2, 6-3, in the regular season. But that was a team that couldn't win the Stanley, couldn't get past the second round for years. You can't do that. All offense, no defense. The old cliche, defense wins championships, especially in the playoffs, because in the playoffs, for the most part, you don't have 6-goal, 5-6-goal games. Yeah, you'll have the occasional one, but you can't go out and beat every team like that. The Capitals learned that the hard way. They underachieved for an entire decade after winning the division year after year after year. So I think, hopefully Florida, for their sake, took some notes on a decade of Capitals underachieving, and when you get to the playoffs, it's not going to happen. You're going to have 2-1, 3-2 games across the board, and you can't just overpower teams with offense. You need to be defensive minded. Special teams, goaltending, another cliche, but that is the difference maker in playoff games. Playoff games are chess matches. Special teams, power plays, penalty killing, defense, goaltending, name of the game. So yes, 8-0-1, incredible start for them, but they're going to have to change. Sure, you can consider them a contender right now, but they're going to have to change that mentality and focus more on defense and winning games. But you're not going to win games 6-2 in the playoffs. You're not going to win 16 of them in the playoffs that way. As again, the Capitals learned the hard way for a decade.
Yeah, I have to say, very early going in the season, but when you look at the eye test, you look at the Carolina Hurricanes roster, and then you look at the Florida Panthers roster. You could almost maybe make an argument that there could be like 4 or 5 future Hall of Famers at least on the Florida Panthers team. Hey, you look at the Carolina Hurricanes. I think they're just more of a well-rounded team. I don't really. Maybe they have 1 or 2 future Hall of Famers if a lot of things, break left or right their way. But it's just more of a overall team aspect, and I think that's the biggest difference between the two. Is you have more elite players on the Florida Panthers that are just arriving, and the Carolina Hurricanes just want to beat you down every game. So that's where we're at with that. So rounding out. We'll start with the locals. So the New York Rangers right now are 6-2-2 for 14 points. Slightly a surprise to everybody. Then we have the New Jersey Devils, as I mentioned before, at 4-3-1, and then the Islanders have only 8 points, but they've only played 7 games. They're way behind in the overall points, overall games played. What's your take on the 3 teams so far? How's everybody doing?
We'll go in order of liked. So we'll start with the hated ones first. The Islanders, yeah, they've only played 7 games, 3-2-2, whatever. No, the Islanders are going to be there. They were conference finals back to back. They got better in the offseason. They're not, hovering around 500 for now, and they're very well rested. Don't worry about them. I'd like to not have to worry about them, but we do. The Devils, I got to watch both teams play. I got to live this weekend. Devils had a very, very good offseason. And, the Devils went from one of the worst teams in the league to a possible, I don't know if they'll make the playoffs, but they're going to be competitive for one of those last playoff spots. They're very, very young. There's no quit in that team. They've got some great veteran leadership in Subban. And they're doing it all without Jack Hughes, without their, face of the franchise right now. I believe they get him back later this month. Don't quote me on that. That's what I wanted to say. But there's somewhat, I was watching them play in a game where they weren't playing the Rangers on Sunday. I watched them play Columbus, and Columbus 6-3 is a decent team. They're, they're young, they're hungry. Like I said, I would not be surprised. This is clearly not the same Devils team as it was last year. Dougie Hamilton, again, the guy they got from Carolina, huge, huge addition to them. They're doing it all without their starting goaltender, Blackwood. They're don't count them out. They're young, they're feisty, and don't be surprised if they don't make the playoffs. It will be in doubt until within a week or two before the end of the season. I have no doubt. And now on to the Rangers, our team. If you told me early on at the beginning of the season the Rangers would be 6-2-2, I'd be ecstatic. However, it's starting to get a little frustrating because Igor has been the best news that we've had, because again, we weren't sure about him. We knew what he could do in the KHL, the AHL. According KHL, I think they're going to retire his number. He had great games and great numbers. Decent enough rookie campaign last year. Hopefully we chalk that up to the sophomore slump, but and I think that's what it's turning out to be, because the guy is absolutely lights out this year. So it looks like, knock on wood, we have our heir to the throne. Defense is, our defense is just young and getting better every day. I mean, Adam Fox is literally the best defenseman in the league. I mean, that's not even debatable. But the offense, I mean, they're getting outshot, every game. I'm looking, we're second place right now, have 24 goals scored. The only team less is the Islanders, but they played 3 games less. So they've got to work on that. On one hand, there's the old, well, they're finding ways to win. Yes, they are. But the Vancouver game, it was good, but, it wasn't a problem, I think, until the Vancouver game. The Vancouver game, they had that 2-0 lead, and they ended up blowing it. Yes, they get a point, sure. Points are the name of the game. But they're just getting grossly outshot in every game. And it's not, with a guy like Gallant, a coach like Gallant, they should be coming out more fired up. They should not, the Rangers have a tendency, no matter who the coach is, of really not showing up to play until the second period. And hopefully it's scoreless, or they're only down 1-0 by then. Yes, they are, in their lack of shots, they are getting some leads. Yes, which is good to see. But, with the firepower they have it, now they have it. Barron, Zibanejad, Kreider has not pulled a disappearing act yet. They've got some serious firepower. Lafreniere is coming into his own. And of course, you've got Adam Fox, Brian Leetch reincarnated on both ends of the ice. Guy gets 2-3 assists a night like it's his job. As it is. There's no excuse for the lack of shots. And, yes, compared to what we've had for the past 4 years, 6-2-2 is nice. But it's getting frustrating watching the other teams just double up their shots. The Columbus game I was at Friday, that was nice. The Rangers dominated that game for 60 entire minutes, shut them out. They had more shots, more hits. They're out hitting everybody, which is very nice to see after what we went through for the years, especially last year. But this lack of shots, 6-7 shots a period is not going to cut it. And, the good news is they are 6-2-2, so they know what they have to build on. But they've got to start. I think Vancouver really exposed it as a problem. Like I said, I think it was okay until Vancouver the other night. Now it's a problem. They've got to start getting 30 shots a game.
Yeah, I'd say
Igor would be nice.
Shesterkin is absolutely stealing the show for the early on. If it wasn't for him, the Rangers would be probably 3-4-2 or whatever the nomination would be. He's the sole reason why they have a winning record right now.
Yeah.
As far as the shots on goal goes, I mean that coincides with the defense, and I think there's going to be nights where there's going to be some deflections that end up unsuspectingly happening that goes by Igor, even though he's in great positioning or whatever the case is. I mean, like, you can give up 2 goals, or you could easily give up 5 goals depending on if you get the bounces the wrong way, and those are the nights that the Rangers are going to have to step up and do more with what they got, and hope just there's a lot of juggling balls in the air. There's a lot of potential out there, and hopefully they'll be able to snag that, because it's almost like a smokescreen. 6-2-2 is not. It doesn't look like the way the other teams are, like the Carolina and the Panthers. I mean, they're absolutely dominant, and they're like clearly dominant. I mean, we're just basically talking about this one guy, and this one guy in net. That which is eerily familiar to another stud that they used to have for about 14 years, and Henrik Lundqvist. A lot of his career was with no offense. This one should not be going the way it is right now. With you think about Zibanejad and Panarin, they should definitely have more points right now. And you'd have to assume that it's going to come, and then that's when the Rangers are really going to take off, if they're going to be able to have more offense and not just score like 2 or 3 a game.
Yeah, I'm looking while you were praising Igor and bowing down before him, as you said it, as we should be doing for that record. That record is all his, and honorable mention Adam Fox. But I just did a quick search of the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games. I just did a quick search of the last 7 games. They were outshot in all of them except for Columbus, which was a nice all-around convincing win. And Ottawa, they ended up outshooting them by 1. I'm sorry, we were outshot in that game. Okay, I forgot which one. There was one other where they outshot by 1. Maybe it was Nashville. Okay, but Calgary, destroyed them on every aspect of the ice. Seattle outshot them by I think they had 18 shots against Seattle. Yes, they won 3-1, but again, that was the Igor show. And Vancouver, the other night, they were outshot. They're outshot in every one of these games except for Columbus, and it's a problem, because we were seeing it. Igor does remind us of Hank for the last 14 years, but something else that reminds us of Hank is not something we want to see, in that them having to rely on the goalie to win these games. Yeah. And, okay, here we are, 10 games in, 1/8 of the season, as you said, 6-2-2. Okay, that's great, but you play like this, it's not going to last the whole year, or you're going to burn him out, which may have been the problem. In some of those playoff runs, they may have burned out Lundqvist because they relied on him too heavily.
Absolutely. But I'm looking at one thing where, you mentioned before how Igor was, like, it was kind of up in the air if he'd have like some sophomore slumps or anything like that. I think more to the point is he's gotten hurt. He's gotten hurt in the past. He's gotten hurt a couple of times. So, like, durability might be the biggest issue, more than if he'll be able to be the same dominant goaltender he was in the KHL and every other level of his earlier career. Now, that means that he's not going to be able to play 70 times a year like Henrik Lundqvist was, and it's gonna come down to the Rangers' offense having to wake up, and the sooner they do that, the better off they're going to be as a whole. Well, which is probably the same to be said for the New York Islanders, because the New York Islanders are stumbling out the gate a little bit, but there's still a long season to go, and with the additions they've made and having Anders Lee on top of what they were already doing in the playoffs. Remember, he was out last year during the last half of the season, so they'll definitely start hitting their stride too, and it should be an exciting year for New York hockey.
Yeah, definitely. You've got all 3, and if you want to include Buffalo into that, because they do play in New York, although a spitting distance from Canada, it is New York. So you've got all 4 teams firing on all cylinders right now. In fact, the Buffalo situation just got very, very interesting. I don't want to step on your toes if you were going to bring that up.
Nah, you could
But
definitely segue into that one. Go ahead.
okay, so yeah, I mean they were playing very, very well before that. And they're about to get better. So yeah, very, very exciting time for local hockey, extended local hockey if we're including Buffalo. So yeah, should be a next very fun next couple of months.
All right. So we have a couple more minutes left in the show. We just want to talk about the NFL. We'll just breeze through. So the New York Jets last week ended up having a big win against the number one seeded at the time Cincinnati Bengals. They end up they're going to play tonight against the Indianapolis Colts.
You're welcome.
I have to say, sorry, Scott. Scott and I were at the game last week, and Scott ended up wearing a Joker's outfit, and then the Jets ended up winning, so he takes all the credit for it. You and Mike White made it happen.
The Joker outfit was not the reason that they won that game, and you know.
So, all right. So right now the Bills are still at the top. They're 5-2. A lot of these divisions, when you look at them up and down, there's some separation being created between the top team and then the rest of them. A few exceptions, like the AFC North, which has every team with a 500 or above record. Very tight race there. The Titans are completely running away from the Colts, which is good though because they ended up losing Derrick Henry, so they'll probably still end up making the playoffs because every other team in that division is just awful. Then we have the AFC West, which has every team with a 500 and above record. So tell me about last week with the Chiefs and the Giants and another super heartbreaking loss that the Giants probably should have won. And the Giants right now should probably be 6-2 instead of 2-6, but they are what the record says they are. What are your thoughts on that and how it went down?
Well, admittedly, I didn't watch the game because 9 o'clock start for my age is just not realistic. So I do apologize, but I did see the score. And anytime, and obviously this is not the same Chiefs team that is coming off back-to-back Super Bowl. They don't have a shred of defense. They got O-line issues, injury problems. Mahomes is clearly not. He can only be so dominant, but this is clearly a step down for him, which for him just means above average. So that being said, anytime you can walk into a Pat Mahomes era Chiefs Arrowhead Stadium on Monday night and only lose 20-17, it's I hate the term moral victory, but that being said, like you just said, it's actually frustrating because they could have won that game. I think what both teams have in common is that they're both going to be coming out of this season saying this is the year of what could have been. What could have been if this, if that. If the Chiefs had a shred of defense, they'd be looking at the third straight Super Bowl. You could pinpoint 2 plays in every single Giants game, like you said, they could be 6-2. Yeah. The entire team didn't get hurt against that Dallas game. Who knows? Very, very frustrating year as a Giants fan. The silver lining, is that there is promise in this because they're so close to getting over that hump, I think. Again, their record doesn't indicate that, but like you said, a lot of heartbreaking losses. Daniel Jones, very optimistic out of what we've seen out of him this year. So this year, more or less done for the Giants, and every loss is just more frustrating than the one before it. But there is optimism being a Giants fan right now. And in some obvious holes they need to fill, but I think what they have, there is some optimism there. And speaking of optimism, I'm sure you want to get into a certain other New York area quarterback that we learned his name.
I don't know. I've been everybody's jumping on the Mike White bandwagon. I want to see some consistency. If it happens 2 or 3 weeks in a row, then I'll be shocked. I mean, tonight is going to be a huge test because you just had that super huge win and all the good feels, and he ended up getting a jersey into the Hall of Fame already after one game. Absolutely incredible. So you have to look at the situation where it's a quick turnaround, it's a short week, and against non-division rivals, so the unfamiliarity is going to be off the charts for everybody, the coaching staff, for the Mike White and everybody else involved. So let's see. I'll be cautiously optimistic at this point. If he ends up doing it again tonight, then yeah, we're in there. We're just like that's going to be basically the highlight of the season. Is however long he could take it. Probably we're looking at more of like a Jeremy Lin, New York Knicks kind of thing, maybe. We'll see. He has to put his string together. It'll be interesting to see. So next week we'll definitely end up talking about that. So let's just talk about the Cowboys at 6-1, the Cardinals at 7-1, and the Los Angeles Rams at 7-1.
Well, we talked about the Rams, and there's really no surprise. Well, there's some surprise there, but Matt Stafford, as we talked about, obviously, get a guy with talent out of Detroit and see what he can do. We're seeing what he can do. So, the Rams had the pieces in place from those few very good Jared Goff years, which may or may not have had anything to do with Jared Goff, but now that Stafford is obviously proving when you get a guy out of a perennial 1-15 team, give him a chance to shine. So good for him. I'm happy for him. The Cardinals, definitely a surprise. Nobody really saw that coming, but they did finally lose. So let's see how they, because they were 7-0. So yes, so we saw them. Was it last year or 2 years ago? Didn't Pittsburgh go something like 10-0 or whatnot? It's completely fall apart.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I'm saying let's see how Arizona reacts to that loss. See if they have behind them. Who do they have?
And the Packers also 7-1. The Packers are the ones that ended up upending the Arizona Cardinals last week.
Yeah, and the Packers don't surprise me because anything in the Aaron Rodgers era, any Packers team in the Aaron Rodgers era is going to be a threat. For some reason, it looks like the media love affair with him was over going into this season, and they weren't really getting the respect. I think they had them winning the division at like 10-6 or something like that. But so that's not really much respect. But I don't know how long he's going to be out. He tested positive for Rodgers testing positive for COVID. I'm assuming he will be back next week. But any 7-1 Packers team in the Aaron Rodgers era is just not surprising, regardless of whether the media, have given up their love affair with them. Don't know. I'm not surprised about that. Unfortunately, I'm not surprised about the Cowboys being 6-1 either. That division, they're pretty much the only team in that division who got better. They're more or less clinched the division already. It's a shame. Somebody's got to win the division.
Just seems like that one time where they're just putting everything together.
Yeah. I think last year was a little different with Washington because last year was the perfect example of somebody's got to win it. This year, they have taken it. Last year Washington just, basically was a game of musical chairs, and they were the only one left with a chair at the end. Not quite the same this year. Dallas went out. They're taking that division by force, and they're beating teams outside of the division. So much as I hate to admit it, they're actually legitimate. And they will. They're going to make the playoffs clearly, and they're going to deserve to make the playoffs. Much as it pains me. So, yeah, nothing really a surprise in the NFC as far as I can see. Tampa 6-2. Saints a little bit of a surprise. 5-2. I thought that they were more or less not great. They have won 3 in a row. They were only 2-2, but beyond that, everything more or less as I kind of expected it in the NFC, especially Detroit being 0-8.
But the one surprise from the NFC is the fact that they're so top heavy compared to the AFC. You always think of the AFC having these teams like the Chiefs and everybody like the Bills. Everybody thought would only lose like once or twice, kind of, and then the super dominant teams early on in the first half of the season have been all in the NFC.
Yeah, I think I think the AFC South is a little bit more of a surprise because nobody really saw Tennessee coming. I think nobody really saw the Raiders coming. I think people knew that the Chiefs' defense was going to be a problem, but I don't think they thought it was going to be as big of a problem as it is. I mean, geez, I'm looking at that right here. Technically, they're above the Broncos. Technically, the Broncos, I guess by tiebreaker, are in last place. The Broncos have let up 137 points. Kansas City's let up 220. Yeah. So even if Kansas City finds a way to somehow make a wild card, which, that's clearly a possibility. We're halfway through. They're only, I think, one game out of a wild card. So they can. This is probably just one, clearly not the end of the Mahomes era. This is just not their year. They have some glaring holes they need to fill.
We definitely just need to curb the dynasty talk for now.
Well, it's definitely taking a year off this year. We can agree on that.
All right, so that does it for our show this week. Thank you very much, Scott, for stopping by again.
Thank you for having me, sir. Always a pleasure.
We'll be back next week. LDM Radio Sports Talk.